What's up, everybody? I'm Chris.
I'm Keaton.
I'm Camden.
I just do
What's
that
up,
every time
everyone?
now.
We are here to talk about one of our favorite TV shows of all time, BoJack Horseman. Now, to begin, I think we should share how we all watched this show because I think we all started watching this show in different eras and had different reactions to it. As far as I know, Keaton, you're the one who watched it first by like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, my stepbrother was watching it from the very beginning, and he told me to watch it at around season 2. So I've been watching it for a while now.
So you were there for every year starting with season 3, watching it live.
It was pretty banger.
That's pretty crazy.
I think I just started like right when season 3 was like about to drop in like a week or something like that. And I was like, yo, I gotta power through it so I can be there for the preview of season 3.
Damn.
You're like the earliest that I've ever heard anyone watch it. Except I have one roommate who I'm pretty sure he watched it in between seasons 1 and 2. So
He caught it early.
yeah, I think
BoJack
to the season 2 side, but
Yeah, because
yeah.
BoJack wasn't considered like, oh, this is a fantastic show until I assume after season 3. The first season didn't get amazing reviews, mainly because the critics only reviewed the first 6 episodes, which are definitely the weakest run of episodes in the whole show by far.
Yeah.
I know season 2 got really good reviews by critics, but it probably didn't start becoming a hit until after season.
Because it had like an amazing ending, which I'm sure people were like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah.
It just then became part of the radar.
Yeah. So then, Camden, which season did you start with?
With 5 or after 5. I didn't start until after 5.
Wow. Okay. So then I'm
Yeah.
sort of in the middle then. I have a weird perspective of it because I watched seasons 1 and 2, I think right when season 4 came out, or it might have, or well, it was all released at the same time. So it was season 4, because I'd been told to watch it, and I watched the first 2 seasons, and I didn't care for it. I was like, I don't know, it's just not for me. Sorry, and then I stopped. And then I heard season 5 was amazing, and I was like, yeah, sure, I guess, but I'm still not into it. But then it was shortly after that, Keaton told me about an episode in season 5 called Free Churro, and he explained the premise of it. And I was like, and also he's talking about, because we were making Panic at the time, and he kept saying like BoJack Horseman actually has a lot of like similarities with Panic. And I was like, really, that's funny, because like even though I watched the first 2 seasons, I never took anything from it or like, oh, I'm going to use this from BoJack and Panic or whatever. But then once I started rewatching the show, I realized, oh shit, we do have a lot of similarities with this show that I sort of didn't watch, sort of did watch. And the whole reason I went to rewatch it was to reach that episode in season 5. And that episode ended up being my favorite once I reached that point. And so I was completely hooked. And by then also, like, I realized season 3 was really where the show kicked off. And now I, of course, have a better appreciation for the first 2 seasons. But like, it's interesting how my perspective completely changed because I just shut the show off, which I feel like a lot of people might have done. Why BoJack Horseman is considered this underrated gem, because it does start off not as good, but then once you've seen the whole thing and you go back to it, there's a lot more to appreciate. And I feel like that's why we're here, to really just talk about this amazing show that got great reviews, but still never really blew up like the way it should have.
Which, you know what, I'm perfectly fine with. And I like that because recently, after season 6 ended, I decided this was my all-time favorite show. I had a lot of realization, just because I used to just consider Game of Thrones my favorite show, and then I was like, after that ending, I was like, can I really call it my favorite show after it ended like that? And then for a while, I think I had Friday Night Lights there. That was just like one of the first shows that like I ever like got into. So it was just like, I'll put that there, and it always felt wrong. And then it was funny realizing that like BoJack was my favorite ever, and I was like, this just feels right now. I realize a lot of my taste has now stemmed from a lot of what BoJack represents, which is just like the silliness and the drama. Just like the I feel like the word dramedy gets a bad rap, But I'm like, that's what BoJack is, and that's like a lot of what I love, like Paul Thomas Anderson or like Coen Brothers and stuff like that. And so I really love BoJack and just how creative they are in their like they're one of just the best writing teams like ever in terms of jokes or just drama and like things that happen to characters and everything.
I'd say it's interesting because I agree with Chris what you were saying, how it never blew up, because pretty much most people I know who have watched this show have liked it on the rewatch. They don't follow through, and then they get convinced again because whatever season was coming out was considered amazing, and they rewatched it. And it's interesting to think about what the best episode is, because most people say the first amazing episode is Fish Out of Water. Which is like right, I think in the
season
beginning,
3, episode 4.
Yeah. And basically, I think a lot of other people say Escape from LA, but I kind of think it's in the middle of season 2, the What Do They Know one, where they're on the
the Let's Find Out one.
That one. Yeah, Let's Find Out. That's the first that's just the first banger one right there. I love that one.
Interesting, because for me, the first time that now that I've rewatched the show a couple times, the first episode that really elevated it was, to me, The Telescope, season 1, episode 8. That's the first one where I think they really embrace like, oh God, like stuff is gonna be dark in this show. Things are not gonna work out. You really should, like, this main character is messed up and you need to accept that. But then my first blue, for, again, our audience is sort of learning of the coloring system. So that's a really high ranking, is season 1, episode 11, Downer Ending. Rewatching that episode. That episode is such a mind fuck. And like, it's a downer ending. And that to me is the first time they really just like fully went like, this is what our show is gonna be. This is what we want.
Yeah, that's a really good episode.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah.
No, I was going to change it. So if you had more to talk about that ending,
well, I was going to rewind back to sort of talking about how it never blew up, because we've had this conversation before, Camden, where it's sort of this catch-22 where you want people to enjoy the thing that you enjoy, but you almost don't want too many people to enjoy it, because what always happens is when something starts out and it's not really well known, it's more pure. It's in its innocent, fertile state where the creators have full control and they're not trying to please really anyone. They just want to make what they want. But as something grows in popularity, you have more people and more voices and more opinions being shoved in. And it's no longer this small, thing. It's now this huge fucking thing that everyone is paying attention to. And there's a lot more pressure, not only to live up to everyone's standards, but also to outdo yourself, which you've hopefully already been doing for a while. And so with anything that becomes popular, whether it's The Simpsons, which you guys love, whether it's Game of Thrones, which we all love, whether it's Rick and Morty, which we all love, it just eventually starts fizzing out. It's really, really hard to keep that amazing quality growing more and more. And other than Breaking Bad, BoJack Horseman, to me, is the perfect embodiment of a show that just kept getting better and better and ended right when it needed to. Despite the fact that it sounds like Netflix surprise canceled it, which I can sort of see that, because season 6, it's split into 2 parts. The story does kind of go fucking fast, but I think it works perfectly fine. And the writers are just so perfect that they could be given any limitation and just work with it.
Well, they kind of work limitations into each episode, I think, especially later on, where I feel like seasons 5 and 6, every episode is pretty much just a wacky new thing. We're going to have a one-character monologue for the whole episode. We're going to have the whole episode be between like a therapist talking to her wife, and it's in the imagination and they can't talk about the characters.
We're going to have an episode that takes place in 4 different timelines and somehow have it make sense.
Yeah, they're in the writer room just like, what wacky thing can we think of next?
We're so fucking perfect. We've made 4 banger seasons. We're in season 5. Let's just fuck around and see what happens. See if we accidentally make a new best episode.
I was going to bring up back to like Fish Out of Water, how that was the first like gimmick episode. I feel like the thing about like their penultimate episodes, like Downer Ending and Escape from LA, especially Escape from LA, I thought was just like goddamn amazing. and then season 3 started with like, what if like a lot of episodes at least are like more gimmicks, like fish out of water. I really love Stop the Presses, which the whole thing is that he is talking to this newspaper company, and they have a section at the beginning where they're like, this guy's trying to cancel his paper, and like, I've tried everything I can, but we can't do anything. And he's like, we're bringing in the closer, and it just like does like different like fucking like comic book like squares of like people walking and everything, and it has like that amazing opening, and the whole episode is him talking about like different stuff that happened in his life. So it has like different timelines and everything too.
Yeah.
And season 3 also had like the best thing that ever happened, which is like basically just a conversation. And so yeah, they really started doing that in season 3, and I thought to an amazing point. And I love that the story that came out of season 3 is that Raphael Bob Waksberg, the show creator, was like, we always had an idea of like, we wanted to do like an underwater episode, but like we don't know how to do that, and that, or how that works into our world or whatever. And then some other guy was like, yeah, I've always wanted to do like an episode where like no one speaks, it's all visual, no one talks at all. And then he always talks about how like he like woke up in the middle of the night like, Eureka, like this is the same episode.
Yeah, I think because we were saying gimmicks, but I like to call it story devices or storytelling devices. Pretty much, because BoJack Horseman, first of all, for people who are watching 11 minutes into this podcast and don't know exactly what BoJack Horseman is about, or maybe saw the crappy trailers for season 1 that didn't properly advertise what the show is really about, the story. Yeah. So BoJack Horseman is about a washed-up former celebrity star actor, BoJack Horseman, who is a horse. In this world, animals live alongside humans, and they're anthropomorphic, and they can speak, and it's perfectly normal. No one bats an eye. And of course, there's a lot of comedy with that, with the idea that there are animals that live alongside humans, and this is normal. So, like, one of our favorite jokes, I know, Cam, you laugh your ass off at this, is they're eating at a restaurant, and there's a human family eating pork, and then it just pans over to a family of pigs sitting there watching them eat pork going, and there's just tons of jokes like that. So already there's unlimited creativity you can have with that. But to me, BoJack Horseman's possibly biggest strength, other than just its ability to balance tragedy and comedy and tell an engaging story beginning to end, is their fucking creativity. And to me, it really comes ahead when they use storytelling devices where they decide this episode is going to be like this. Instead of just doing A plot, B plot, it's going to be an episode that takes place entirely underwater and almost no dialogue the entire time. Or an episode where it's 2 characters in a restaurant just talking the whole time. Early on, they sort of experimented with this because the biggest fact is sort of the penultimate episode of every season is generally regarded as the best episode, or at the very least, it's going to be the one that blows your fucking mind. And this is absolutely true for seasons 1 and 2. And they introduce sort of storytelling devices. Season 1 is like a bottle episode because it is mainly 3 characters in a room tripping drugs for most of the episode. So it's like a bunch of wacky fucking, experimental shit happening. And then Escape from LA, season 2, episode 11, is sort of its own different episode because the main character, it only follows BoJack, and he leaves LA, which is where the whole thing takes place in, and he's just somewhere else for the whole episode. So it's like they were introducing like, oh, this episode's going to be different. But then, Fish Out of Water is definitely the first time they were like, let's just have a completely different wacky premise and see what happens. And to me, that's what creates some of the best episodes of the show.
Did you guys ever watch / hear about what's the creator's name? Raphael
Bob Waksberg? What?
Yeah.
He created another show on Amazon, Undone.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that. Very banger. It's like pretty much a less comedy version of BoJack, where all of the trippy shit and the trippy sequences that are really cool in all of the wacky episodes are pretty much just the plot of this show. And it's really cool because they like shot it, I think, with real people, right, Camden? And then like
it's rotoscoped, I think.
Yeah, it's rotoscoped, and it just looks so cool. It's
Because the thing is like, or I think Time Zero is my favorite episode, and they were basically like, what if that was just like the show?
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much the entire like 10 episodes or however many.
Yeah. And then I sort of got sidetracked. I didn't finish explaining the plot of the fucking show. But yeah, so BoJack Horseman is a washed-up celebrity star who starred on a TV show called Horsing Around a couple decades previously. And now he's, 50 years old. He's an alcoholic. He does drugs. He's just, miserable and forgotten basically. And he's just trying to reclaim his former glory. And so the whole show is about him trying to reclaim his former glory while also learning that what he became and what he represents is terrible and that he needs to better himself. But he's such a fucked up person that it is damn near impossible for him to actually change and become a better person. And I think what turned me off on the show originally was that all I saw was this terrible main character who refuses to change. And no matter how many times they hint like, oh, he's going to get better, I'm not going to hate him anymore, he always fucks up. And I was getting sick and tired of it after 2 seasons. I was like, I gave the show 2 seasons and I'm done. But then rewatching it, there is a slow change, even in those first 2 seasons, that I just didn't notice. And that's what's, in my opinion, really powerful about the show, is that it is about change, but it's about realistic change where there isn't, mind-blowing, huge, different arcs every episode or every season or whatever. And it really just hammers home the point that if you fall down a black hole of just like misery and self-deprecation and depression like BoJack Horseman, it's really hard to get out of it. And it's almost like you're rooting for BoJack because you're rooting for yourself. I feel like everyone can kind of see a bit of themselves in BoJack or recognize someone in their life who is like BoJack, someone that you just wish could do better, but somehow they just can't. And so explaining the show like that, it sounds fucking depressing and dark, and it is. But at the same time, it's also an adult cartoon full of comedy, full of wacky shit. And I think that's what it was advertised as. And so a lot of people sort of just wrote it off as like, okay, it's another Family Guy, another South Park, another Bob's Burgers, whatever. We have plenty of those already. And unfortunately, people missed out on one of the best stories ever.
Also, they played themselves with the idea that they because their whole thing is that like the first 6 episodes are purposefully made to be like just like typical adult animated cartoon, because that way once you get past that, they trick you and then you go, oh, it's this other thing. But they even did that like with their comedy, because like their comedy, like, because they're still like one of the funniest shows ever, in my opinion, and at least one of the most clever. And the first like few episodes just like aren't really that much like at all. It has stuff that's like it has kind of like cutaway gags that are just like, oh, that doesn't pertain to the story or whatever. I think it was in the first episode there was one cutaway gag like to like BoJack and Princess Carolyn, and then they do a cutaway gag like from that, and it like takes forever, and it goes back to that scene and takes forever, and it goes back to the original, and it was like, I was like, oh, there's like another show going on, I forgot. They were just kind of bad at it, or maybe that was the point, was like they were gonna fake being bad at it, or maybe they just grew over time, I don't know. But they're one of the smartest like TV just writers ever, and the most clever people at comedy.
Yeah, there was one joke in the very first episode, or it might have been episode 2, actually. I think it's episode 2. We're not going to talk about spoilers of the show yet. We'll get into that later in this podcast. So we'll just kind of label that, and there'll be a big fat sticker on the fucking screen letting you know spoilers. So anyway, no spoilers yet, but a joke from episode 2. There's someone who's writing his memoir, and they ask him how his childhood was, and it cuts to a cutaway where his dad is smoking and yelling, and his mom is being a bitch, and they're just like fighting, and he's sitting there like a little child, just like completely scared. And then it cuts back to present day, and he's like, normal. And it's like, that's funny, but that's kind of it. It kind of feels like a joke I would have seen in later Family Guy, or just like something that's like, it doesn't seem original. It just kind of seems like that typical edgy joke that you would have in an adult cartoon.
Pretty easy.
Yeah, that's sort of, it's a typical joke, but not something like that I see like, oh, this is the personality of the show. Like only this show could make this kind of joke. That's a joke I feel like has already been done a million times probably. And I think that's representative of kind of the early episodes where they just hadn't quite found their voice yet. But at least they knew where they were headed, which is why by the end of season 1 it pays off.
I'm currently rewatching BoJack from the top, and I'm only at the end of season 2 actually. But I was rewatching as I was rewatching season 1. There were a couple episodes where I was just like, yeah, that was kind of not good, just in certain parts. And it was, I sometimes forget sort of how mediocre some of those episodes are until you start getting to some of the bangers, like down
Live Fast, Diane Nguyen, episode 5.
I hate that episode.
My least favorite episode of the whole show. It's the only orange I ever gave.
I like that. I like the second episode. The first episode's not too bad.
Well, you know what? Like, the first time I watched it, I was just like, well, yeah, because I hate how annoying, like, her brothers are. On second rewatch, when I just, like, know how funny the show is, I was just like, oh, they're, like, hilarious, though. They're pretty goddamn fun. I feel like the brothers are hilarious. Can't talk watching the game.
All right. I get the point of that episode, because the whole point is, like, sometimes family just isn't right for you, or sometimes in order for you to grow, you just have to leave home. And no matter how broken your home is, it can always just remain broken. But I just kind of felt like the family was too cartoony and too fucking annoying. And I was just like...
Yeah, but I feel like that's them. That's BoJack is over-exaggeration.
Sure.
Yeah, but... Yeah, I just didn't think the episode was, like, very well written.
Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But that's the weakest...
Prickly Muffin, on the other hand, though.
Huh?
Prickly Muffin, on the other hand, though.
Oh, yeah. That one I think is one of my least favorite as well.
I think that one's my least favorite.
What happened in Prickly Muffin?
That's the one with Sarah Lynn.
Well, yeah, what does she do?
Well, when they begin their whole thing together for a bit.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that one, and I remember not liking whatever one was like Brat, Pew Pew, or whatever. That one was kind of like...
That's in season 3.
Oh, I like that episode.
I haven't gotten there yet in my rewatch, but I remember being annoyed by that one.
That one is my least favorite of season 3. But the thing is, like, season 3 and on, I don't dislike any episodes.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that one again.
Yeah. That one... Because another thing about BoJack Horseman, not only is it about this guy, of course there are other characters in the show as well, but it's also lots of critiquing on society, America, specifically Hollywood and LA, and just like stardom and celebrity culture. And what's cool is you can see how the show talks about new big things with each season. You can kind of tell, like, oh, this season came out around this time. Because I remember season 3 was the season about like shootings. I think that's what Brat Pew Pew is about. And then I think season 4 had to do with abortion. I forget if that one was the abortion one.
Well, no, Brat Pew Pew is the abortion. That's like...
Oh, that's... Okay.
The whole thing is that she's killing her baby. And so
okay, gotcha.
Pew Pew.
Gotcha. I forget which one was about shootings. That's Thoughts and Prayers.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Oh, Thoughts and Prayers, yeah.
Thoughts and Prayers, yeah. That one's about shootings. And then season 5 was a lot about Me Too. That was
the thing about BoJack is that it's so woke, bro.
It is. It's a fucking woke show.
It's so, because I love how like anti-Hollywood it is. It is like, you could say, a love-hate relationship, because like also like the showrunner like lives there and stuff, and he does kind of say like, yeah, it's like a tar of a city, and but like you live there kind of thing. Yeah. But I love how anti-Hollywood it is. And what's so crazy about it is that there was a season 2 episode. It was 2015, and there was a Me Too episode.
There was.
Hank After Dark is about like a famous guy who like had a bunch of sexual misconduct allegations, but everyone's like, what? I fucking love him and everything. And then the end of the episode was just that, like, yeah, he can get away with it because he's famous. And that was 2015. The Me Too movement, like Casey Affleck had Me Too stuff against him, and he won an Oscar, and that was early 2016. Yeah. So like you can really tell like how much like no one gives a shit about the Me Too movement until like there was a movement. So to do an episode back in 2015 was like pretty fucking cool.
I think they might have been inspired by Bill Cosby for that, because Bill Cosby's initial allegations was around that time. So I think that might have been the inspiration for that episode. But it was still like they still were either ahead of their time, and they just are really good at taking real world shit and having it work well and woven into their world and their story. Like season 5 is the big Me Too one, but like all of it makes complete fucking sense. And that's also why season 5 is my favorite season. Because to me, it just like, because season 5, I think, is the one season that has like almost an entire story in itself. Like season 1 and 2 kind of connect together, and then 3 and 4 especially really further that. But then 5 almost is sort of a little bit of a reset. And it's like, okay, well, wait, what's the story going to be about now? And then by the end, you're like, oh, fuck, this is it. And then 6 is wrapping up the whole show.
Well, yeah, before 5, I'm pretty sure was the moment, or in between 4 and 5, at least I think, was when Harvey Weinstein came out and was like, "I like BoJack Horseman." He's like, "I like the show. I relate to BoJack a lot."
Yeah,
and
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then the showrunners were like, "That's not good. Like people aren't like getting our show, I guess." And so what I love about season 5 is that they had like a reset where they were like, we need to make it so that like people know how horrible he is, and that like we're not trying to paint him in a bright light. We're just trying to paint him in a light, just because like he's the main character of our show and he's a figure that like represents a lot of different people in the real world. So I love that they like kind of took a step back and like fixed the character almost, even though you were 4 seasons into an already amazing show, and they like made fixes.
Yeah, because it's similar to Rick and Morty, where people idolize the character of Rick Sanchez, but he's a terrible person, and that's always been his character. That's the whole shtick, is that he's a terrible person who goes on these wacky adventures, and he's a genius, and he's incredible, but at the same time, he's miserable because he's just such an asshole to everyone, and he just refuses to like let people in, and people idolize that for some reason. Like, oh, I want to be like him. I want to be a super genius and fuck anyone. I'm cynical and I don't need nobody. And it's like, no, this is bad. BoJack Horseman is sort of similar to that, where it's like, oh, I just wish I could be an asshole and just kind of get away with shit. I wish I was a celebrity and, you know, I could do whatever I want. And it's like, no, like he is a bad person. The whole point of the show is that you don't want to be like him. And I think they did a fantastic job of like showing that with that season, especially.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. What else do we want to talk about before we actually dive into spoilers?
Nothing.
Yeah,
well, I guess for the people here who have not seen BoJack or maybe stopped after season 1 or 2, what would you say is the big reason why people should watch this show? Give it one good think.
It's the perfect blend of depressing drama and hilarious comedy, and the ending is the best part, which is a very rare thing to say with TV.
Yeah, every season gets better in my opinion, except I prefer 5 over 6, but I will not knock anyone for saying 6 is the best season at all.
I think 5 is better than 6, but I think the personal like ending of the story, like just the whole ending, is like sort of the best part.
Oh yeah, like it ended pretty much perfectly. Like I can't think the best episode of the show in my opinion is the penultimate episode.
Yeah.
I think most people say that season 4 is the best on most polls I've read and like stuff. Yeah. But I mean, like if you were to pick anything 3 through 6, I wouldn't knock you at all. But 5 is my personal favorite as well. The thing about the show is that like even if like you don't think like it gets like better and better, it only like goes up. It doesn't go back down. It's never like the show is kind of fallen off or anything. I think that BoJack has just kind of like taken the real world and put it in this hilarious, tragic story, and has like never done any worse than what your peak could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's also kind of interesting about this show and why my pitch of why people should watch it is it's the perfect blend of ridiculous cartoon and just legitimate deep drama. Like there is stuff in this show that is darker and more depressing, has made me cry more than most TV shows I've ever watched that are live action. Like to me, this show could have been live action if it wasn't animals walking around. That's the really like they don't get into too many wacky cartoony hijinks. Like overall, it is a pretty grounded show in reality with real character stuff. And a lot of times there are episodes where it's just kind of people talking. And I feel like
And
that's the last thing.
They couldn't have done the artistic creativeness that they did if it wasn't animated. So.
Well, yeah, sure. I'm sure they would have found a new way to do it. But I guess my point is like the rule of cartoons are it's a visual medium primarily. Like the whole point is you can do whatever you want. And so I think the last thing most cartoons want to do is just have it be people talking. But a lot of times that is what BoJack is. They don't need to make it super duper wacky all the time and amazing to watch. And instead it's like, no, just let the characters be the characters. Let your amazing writing take over and tell your story. So
what I like that BoJack makes people realize is that gimmick isn't a bad word. Like I feel like people like gimmick means like, oh, you're just like copying something, whatever. And that but gimmick it like when you get down to the nitty gritty, like everything has happened before. Like it's hard to be original nowadays. What's really amazing to do is take something and like make it your own so that it feels original. And that's what I think they do with like countless episodes. So
yeah,
like they prove to do that over and over and over, not just like they've done that a couple times kind of thing.
Yeah. I almost wonder if in the writer's room their golden rule was there are no bad ideas. Because it kind of feels like a show like that. Like you would a lot of these episodes, you hear the premise and you're like, how the fuck are they going to make that good? If you have the right people with the right creative minds, you can make anything good. And they did it time and time again.
Yeah. And I just love that they don't have like, because I feel like when shows like have an amazing blend of like either drama and comedy or just like tragedy and the funnies, but like you don't understand how high these ceilings are. Like this is like one of the funniest shows there has ever been and one of the like best dramatic shows there has ever been. It's not just that like they're good at both.
Yeah. I would almost say if audience members here love Rick and Morty, this show has similar aspects in the sense that Rick and Morty is a show that is sort of about like nothing matters and it's cynical and it's ridiculous, but surprises you with dark dramatic moments where all of a sudden you find yourself, oh shit, I really care. Oh my God, like damn, like that really hit me. That's BoJack, but like even more. And they really dive more into that side of surprising you and making you like it like moves you a lot. So
this is the big man's Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
If you want to be pretentious and just like be an asshole and be like, well, no, I like BoJack Horseman more than Rick and Morty, which I feel like everyone should anyway. But yeah.
Sure, yeah. But okay, all right. So now we're going to talk about spoilers, and we're just going to dive into the details and why we love this. If you haven't watched BoJack, I would advise you not watching from here on out because we're going to spoil the whole fucking thing. That will probably ruin the experience for you if you end up watching it. And if you have watched the show, then welcome. I hope y'all agree with some of our points that we have to make. So let's what do we want to talk about first? We just want to talk about just the story and how it builds and concludes amazingly.
I feel like if we talk about like each like episode that's like a not, or I guess not necessarily just like our picks or whatever, but just like the big ones that stand out. It'll trickle down into the rest of the show anyway.
Okay, sure. So let's see. Do we want to start with the telescope? That's kind of the first real like, this is what the show is probably going to be episode.
Yeah. Sure.
I like that episode because that's sort of one of the first ones that introduces just something that's going to recur all the time. A lot of the episodes in BoJack do connect, but a lot of them are sort of just standalone wacky things, and it's more emotions that connect throughout the episodes. the telescope introduces sort of Hank as a kid. Or why am I blanking on his name?
Herb Kazaz.
Herb. We said a Hank, and I was like, hey, that's not right.
Hank
Herb
Schrader.
guy.
It's the first one that sort of introduces Herb and like his sort of dark story and dark character arc, and he's one of sort of the last things that we see with season 6 as well. And it's just like a perfect, to me, that's the episode that starts the perfect button of the ending, almost, if you will.
Mm-hmm. That episode always gets me because it's the first time they like really hammer home the point that sometimes you will just fail and that's it. Because the whole point of the episode is BoJack is going there to try and rekindle something, to apologize, and he apologizes in a shitty way, but he does. And her, I almost said Hank. Herb is just, I do not accept your apology. I will die soon, and I want to die with you always knowing that you are a terrible person and you ruined my life. And that's it. And there is no caveat. That is the end. And then the real ending is he fucking kisses Diane. Like, in that moment of, oh my God, this is horrible. I have failed. I need comfort. And it just fucks up even more.
And that's a plot point that comes back later on in episodes too, like the talk show episode, which is another one of my favorites. These like two major plot points kind of stick with the characters.
Both season 2 episode 8s, or episode 8s for each season. That's how they.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about BoJack is their running gags. I love a good fucking running gag, and the shows that I feel like do that, I always hailed Arrested Development as just like the show that does that the best. But I think BoJack will take the cake just because, one, they can do animated ones, so it's just like they have endless opportunities. But this isn't necessarily a running gag, but just the running like not theme either, but just like they do a thing every season where they say one F word a season. And what I love about their running gags or just their repeated things is that they always do it perfectly. There's never a time the F word like isn't used. Actually, that's wrong, because there's one time in season 4, the one they use in season 4, I was always like, oh, okay. I feel like you kind of ruined it, or not ruined it, but it's just like it wasn't as cool as the other ones.
They're usually hard hitting. That one wasn't as hard hitting.
That one wasn't at all. It was just that but I guess you could argue it was, but it was like episode like 4 and like Hollyhock's there, and then BoJack's like, yes, I'll put on a play for my mother. Then she'll realize that like I am who I am and everything, and then I can get to say, fuck you, mom, or something like that. And it was just like, oh, that wasn't used in like a as cool a way as all the other ones, I don't think.
Sure. But usually they nail it. I think the fun fact about the F words that they use is that characters who say fuck always say it when that relationship with BoJack is officially broken forever. Because season 1's is Herb saying, I now get the fuck out of my house. From then on, relationship is broken forever. Season 2, episode 11 is the doe. I forget her name, but she says fuck.
Charlotte.
If you ever come back here, I'll fucking kill you. Relationship broken forever. Season 3, Todd says fuck.
Fuck, man. What is say?
And from then on, they're never the same. Season 4, that's the iffy one. I guess you can sort of say it's like it was foreshadowing that the relationship with the mom would be broken forever, but it was always broken forever, so that one doesn't really count. Season 5 is What the Fuck Is Wrong With You, which is not only his relationship with her broken, but just like in general, the connection with the world is gone forever. Then season 6,
because what they do in season 6 is that like it's Gina, the same girl, and she like messes up because she's thinking about the time BoJack.
Yeah.
It causes her to mess up and like freak the guy that she was like acting with out, and he goes, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" The same way she said that to BoJack, and that was like the end of, or it wasn't the end of her acting career, but that was like a point in that episode where there was a scene later on where like two like producers were talking. They're like, "I'm gonna make this movie," and they're like, "Whoa, cool!" And then the producer was like, "What do you think about Gina for the main role?" And the guy was like, she's kind of weird or whatever. So like that moment like kind of ruined her career.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, okay, so now let's talk about Downer Ending. First penultimate episode. Penultimate episodes also get sort of a cheat sheet a bit of why they usually be the best episode of the season. Is they're usually the climax. It's usually where everything kind of builds to a head and all blows up, and by the end everything changes. You're like, oh fuck. So Downer Ending. I remember first time I watched the show, I did really like this episode. Every time I thought about, damn, I wish I liked that show, I would just remember, yo, but I liked Downer Ending though. That was really fire. And that episode, I love that episode because this show, obviously, like writing wise, they dive so incredibly deep into their characters' mental states. Like it's hailed as like one of the best shows about depression and mental illness in general. And this episode is like the first real time they are totally in the mind of BoJack, and we really just figure out who the fuck he is. And it's so cool seeing like him realize all these things that he's kept buried in his mind, and just going on this journey with him where you're going to all sorts of scary places in his drugged out mind, and it's like, oh fuck, I'm just having a good time. Like,
it is also the first episode where they show off their like artistic talent, really.
Mm-hmm.
Is they have like a scene where it's just like splash of color in the background and like just like pencil drawings and stuff, and they'll just have different ways to show that like they're tripping and everything. And then, so I mean, you add drugs into anything and it's gonna make it like trippy and cool. But
yeah. Downer Ending is really the first time they figured out what they wanted to do, because the ending of that is basically summarizes the premise of the show. Tell me I'm a good person. I need to know that deep down I actually am a good person, despite the fact I've done all this fucked up shit. And the whole point of the show is you learn he's not. You're only a good person if you do good things. You have done bad things. Just because you regret it doesn't make it not still bad. And that's a lesson that's really painful to learn for him. All right, let's go to Let's Find Out, Season 2, Episode 8.
I love Mr. Peanut Butter. Mr. Peanut Butter's my favorite character. I can mad vibe with any peanut butter centric episodes. And I don't know if I would call that one a Mr. Peanut Butter centric episode, but he's heavily featured in it.
I think that's tough to say, yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically all of the wacky people combining for one story, because BoJack is there and he's interacting with Mr. Peanut Butter, who's interacting with other people, and then Diane is there and the owl chick, and Todd is like doing stuff, and everybody. There's not really any wacky side quests or anything other than the main TV show. Yeah, and it's just such a banger, and it's just such a fun time too.
Yeah, Season 1 of Mr. Peanut Butter was originally just introduced as a foil to BoJack and a rival for BoJack to hate and want to beat or whatever. But then Season 2 actually fleshed him out more. It was like, no, let's make Mr. Peanut Butter his own character. And Episode 8, I keep saying this, is the first time where he like actually like gets lit, because he's always so positive and happy. And I just remember when I first saw that, I was like, oh shit, he's getting lit. He's like angry. There's this whole side of him that I assumed didn't exist, because he just seems insatiably happy.
Yeah. Why Mr. Peanut Butter? Well, okay, so it's hard to say. It's hard to like not say BoJack. Well, BoJack is the Don Draper of BoJack Horseman. Don Draper is the main character in Mad Men, in case, I don't know if people didn't know, but like he's a horrible person, and it's hard to not call him like your favorite, just because he's so far and away like the best character and like the most fleshed out and everything. Yeah. But like I love Princess Carolyn. She'd probably be my favorite, because like I also just love all the episodes around her. But like Mr. Peanut Butter, I fucking love Mr. Peanut Butter. He's so like he's the peak of like the comedy writing, or the comedy aspect of it, I feel like. And like everything he says is just killer.
And to build on that, I think the genius of Mr. Peanut Butter, because he's like the peak comedy, is to me like, yes, the BoJack scenes are by far the most emotional, but the Mr. Peanut Butter emotional scenes, when the few pop up, hit different because like he's such a positive guy, and then when you see him either mad or sad, I feel like it's a stronger reaction than when BoJack is mad or sad. And I always connect with like the Mr. Peanut Butter ones more, just because it's like seeing this super happy character go all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is true.
It's interesting because I was thinking about that. Other than BoJack, what is my favorite character? Because I always found Mr. Peanut Butter annoying early on in the show, and then I grew to really like him. But then he also really frustrated me at times, and I was like, But he, I tend to not gravitate towards the comedic characters as much. Like Todd was never really my favorite. If I had to think about it, I actually think I am more interested in Diane, which I'm probably the first person to ever say that. She's probably the least favorite of the main 5 characters and the one that most people have the most problems with.
Well, she has a lot of really good stories, like the one where she goes back to Vietnam and a lot of really interesting episodes, but she kind of comes off, I guess, the most boring. But
she's so amazing.
She's not meant to be comedic ever.
Yeah. Why her character's so amazing, which is similar to the Homer's enemy thing, is that it's a microcosm of just like how like TV is and how TV sees people, because she's the most level-headed one. Mm-hmm. So the viewers are just like, fucking shut the fuck up, Diane. Let the show be fun. Come on, bro.
Yeah. And it's also because, like, BoJack is celebrity and rich. Mr. Peanut Butter's a celebrity and rich. Todd is, homeless technically, but somehow is the luckiest person in the world, and just success happens to him, and he's also a secret genius. And then Princess Carolyn, sure, is struggling all the time, but is still a successful agent and really good at what she does. Diane is the one character who is just always struggling throughout the show, trying to figure out who she is, always feeling like she's not accomplishing as much. And so there's a lot more like to root for her. She's kind of more like just regular people. Like I think she is most like down to earth, normal person. And she is an inherently definitely the most good person on the show, I think, other than Todd. But she's trying to do more about it. Like Todd is just kind of unaware and just kind of an idiot. But she's like always hyper critical of herself, and I think that's something that I really relate to with her character, because she and BoJack are definitely the most similar characters, which is why they're sort of set up together. But she only sees her flaws in herself, while BoJack pushes his flaws away to try and bump up his successes. When in reality, Diane is actually a good person who has done good things and should see that side of herself, while BoJack needs to see the actual real dark side of himself and change. So it's almost just like these two characters have similar mindsets, but they have different avenues of how they go about with the story in a way. But with Diane, I've just always related to her the most, I think, and her struggles.
What I love about BoJack too is that they'll do they'll change things that with, even though it's like one of the first episodes. I just love our A story is a D story, which is the episode where the D gets stolen from the Hollywood sign, and that episode is calling it Hollywoo now instead of Hollywood, and that's a thing that stays throughout the whole show. Yeah, and so I love that they just like commit and stay to stuff like that, and they do a similar thing with Diane where they change her appearance, and like in a cartoon, it's like that's crazy, but they do that. They change BoJack's appearance too, that's actually. True, yeah. So I just love that they do stuff like that.
Oh, another thing I always loved about the show is each season they change some of the opening credits. So it reflects what's going to happen in that season. And that's also why season 6 is just by and large my favorite fucking intro ever. Because each season it's going to show the different locations, sort of the different characters that he's going to be interacting with each season. Season 6 being the final season, they then showed sort of best ofs. They just highlight the biggest episodes of each season to show the path that BoJack has taken throughout this whole show. I just remember the first time I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this season. This is great. All right, let's find out. It was great. Now, Escape from LA. Let's talk about that episode. That heartbreaking shit.
Fucking amazing. What I love about this episode is that it is like, because I always see BoJack as like a show that's not afraid to make fun of itself, And in doing so, like making fun of the world, like it is like arguably the smartest show there ever was, and just like the most woke show there ever was. And I like that. Well, the show's about how like BoJack was in this Full House type show. That's what people compare it to the most.
Yeah.
And how it's just like happy go lucky and like kind of the stupid show, but he loves it. And of course, like the main character like loves it because he was in it and everything. And it takes a look at like the self-centeredness and everything of Hollywood and just like people in general. And what I love about Escape from LA is that the episode is kind of like an episode, or not the episode, it's kind of like the life of what,
Yeah.
like he goes through sitcom type stuff. Like he teaches Penny how to drive. He's just like, they do the whole prom thing, and it's like these are like regular just like sitcom stuff that like he has like developed a life for in himself. And what's crazy, what I love about that is that he like always reminisces about the fake life he had back in when he was doing his show, and he is living it now. And he's like, oh, I love this life, and like everyone loves me kind of thing. And like everything, it has to end at some point, and it always just ends the most tragic way it could when it comes to BoJack. And it has like this back and forth of like he's doing that, but like he can't help it, or not that he can't help it, but like there's something that like he always pushes him back that that just like enables him. And so I just love that back and forth in Escape from LA. Also just has like maybe my favorite BoJack joke ever, because there's a character named Pete Repeat, and his whole thing throughout the episode is that he's like, yeah, they call me Pete Repeat. They call me that because I say everything twice. And he's like, really? Everything? And he's like, yeah. Wait, did I forget to say that twice? My bad. I usually do it, you know. And then so throughout the whole episode, there's just like multiple times where like he almost could have said something twice, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He just never says something twice. And then they're at the prom, and the joke comes up there because they're just sitting there at the prom, and then Pete Repeat is like, man, this prom blows. And then one of the girls is like, man, you can say that again. And he goes, I know. It's a perfect opportunity to repeat, and you didn't take it.
Can we talk about how super sick it is as well that this episode came back for the final season as well?
Yeah, this is the one that boned him the most, I think.
Yeah, I guess so.
This is the one that's, was the main one against him in season 6.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the show writers were like, they always had a plan on how it was going to end. The only reason like it felt rushed is because they did plan to do more before that happened. But I know that like the incident in season 2 was supposed to be like what I guess takes him down like the most, because it's supposed to be like anything can come back and haunt you. Like you could become a different person, which is what it seemed like he had finally done at like the beginning of the second half of season 6. But you have to deal with what you've done.
Yeah. Because with Escape from LA, going back to sort of, he was trying to recreate this lost family that he never had, that he felt like he had in the TV show, because his life is a TV show. So that's why he's always obsessed with it. And he's always trying to insert TV tropes into his real life, because in TV, things can end perfectly. And that's also cool, because that's sort of the rule of cartoons in general. And any sitcom is like, by the end, things reset to the beginning. They're inherently not about change, which is my problem actually with most sitcoms and cartoons, because I love change. And that was also part of my problem when I first started watching the show, because I didn't see the change. But then when I gave it another chance, I realized there is change throughout it. And it is all about how hard it is to change. And so that's what's, again, like they have episodes where things just end in failure, and it's permanent, and it sucks, and it's horrible. And this is one of them, and was the biggest one at the time. It's usually what happens is BoJack just is a victim of his own vices. He just can't help himself when it comes to alcohol or drugs or being a selfish asshole or being greedy or wanting to fuck. It's just all kinds of different problems he has. I know I stated that very eloquently. He wants to fuck, and it just always bites him in the ass every single time. Escape from LA is a fire way to end that. And then we get into season 3. Which episodes do we want to talk? I guess we got to talk about Fish Out of Water.
Yeah, I guess we did a little bit, but I just love that this was the start of like gimmick episodes and homages and everything.
Yeah.
And I like that they just the thing about them is that they take their gimmicks and they bring it to higher heights than it's ever been before. The idea of not saying a word in an episode, I feel like has either never been done before. I might have seen one like that before. I'm sure there is one out there like that. I'm also sure it's not as good as Fish Out of Water.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but I just love that they do that.
And also that it. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna mention that the episode they use that premise to also tell, I think, just one of the best jokes ever, and it makes sense and works on so many levels. Because the whole premise is that BoJack is underwater and he has a helmet on so he can breathe. But with that, no one can hear him talking. So that's why there is no talking. And meanwhile, the fish characters can't talk because they're just like, you can't understand them. So there is no talking the whole episode. And BoJack can't communicate. So he has to help all these things. And then at the very end, a human underwater with a helmet goes up to him and is like, hey, get out of the way, asshole. And BoJack's like, what? Hey, get out of here. And he's like, wait, there's a button? He presses it. He's like, oh, you've got to be. And it cuts out. Like that. I remember when I saw the ending of that, I was like, that is such a fucking great joke.
Yeah. I think a super important thing that this episode did was like world building as well, because I think that the two biggest with world buildings are the chickens episode, which explain how they eat meat in the world, but they are animals as well. And then this one that sort of explains, because you're always wondering what happens with the ocean. There are fish. I don't know if we see fish, but there are animals walking around all over the place. Is there also an ocean in this world? Are there fish? What's up? And then you actually go to like this city, like full on New York underwater, and see the fish, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. That's all right.
Yeah. And it's the episode that makes BoJack like really care and just like do something purely nice. Like he goes out of his way through this whole adventure just to be a good person, and in the end, it's completely forgotten about, like it never happened.
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
Good one. Good one.
Good one. Let's see. Do we just want to get to That's Too Much, Man?
Yeah.
I just want to point out one quick thing that I love about. The like best thing that ever happened is amazing.
Yep.
And that plays into another gimmick of just like it's all pretty much just one conversation. Mm-hmm. The episode before that, I love the premise because the whole thing, the reason that there is a conversation in episode 9 is that BoJack is going to fire Princess Carolyn, and the episode before that is because he's going to fire. It explains why he's going to fire her is because like she like couldn't get him like a couple different deals, and just because she like overplayed her hand and everything. But the whole episode is basically her versus Vanessa Gecko and the rabbit guy, and they at the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode, it starts on them, and it shows that like they're also like a failing company. And they're working really hard to get their people the right roles and everything. And they're working just as hard for their people as Princess Carolyn is working hard for her people, if not arguably more, because Princess Carolyn is kind of like being an asshole and being like, no, I can like fuck around with them. I won't lose the gig. But then she does lose the gig. And at the end of the episode, they're just like the good guys won kind of thing. I think he said that, or he says like we're the good guys, something like that.
Yeah, it's like, and in the end, the right people won.
It's funny being like, it's like, this. I think we only think of Princess Carolyn and like BoJack as like the good guys, just because they're the ones we're watching. Whereas if this was a show about the other two people, we could very easily think the same thing. And I just love how human this show is, even though it's about animals living with humans and everything, and just how silly it can get, is that it shows, it doesn't paint people in a bad light. It just says these are other people and they're going after the same things.
Yeah. With Best Thing That Ever Happened, because that is also one of my favorite episodes, is it dives so deep into just their relationship, BoJack and Princess Carolyn, because this show hailed this like really great in terms of mental illness, and just like it really just gets you to think about yourself and what makes you tick, you know, your relationships with people, your actions, and how everything leads to who you are, and even outside factors that lead to who you are. And like it's so well done. It's so smart and just full of thought-provoking just like things. And that episode is just you go as deep as you possibly can with those two characters, and they talk about everything. There's not a single subject that is like, oh, we're not going to go there. It's like, no, they go there, and it's just so captivating, despite the fact that it's just two characters in a restaurant the whole time. But I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I love bottle episodes.
I also just love Alison Brie as the critic. It's the same person who plays Diane. She does like a bunch of different voices on the show. But Alison Brie is also just like my celebrity crush. But anyway, she's in Community and Mad Men and so whatever. But
damn, she's in fucking all the good shit.
Yeah, but she's not like a big character in Mad Men. But anyway, because there's just like so many times where it's like the critic is getting restless, and she's like a worm, and she's like, writing this down.
Yeah.
It's like there's one time the restaurant was on fire and stuff, and she's like trying to put it out. It just cuts to her, and she's like, ooh, ah, ooh, ee.
All right, season 3, episode 11. That's too much, man. Sorry about this fucking episode.
That's too much, man.
That's too much, man.
It's just so good.
I think this episode.
We can end it there. That's
I think this episode might have made me cry at some point. It's definitely, it always gets me emotional. I know that. Mm-hmm. I know one moment that I've definitely cried on the show, but that's later. But this episode is arguably the worst thing BoJack ever did, probably, because this is the other thing that comes back to bite him in the ass. This episode, yeah, this is the thing that actually gets him in the end, and it's fucking horrible.
It's totally his fault too in this as well. Where it's like with Escape from LA, you're like he's doing fucked up things, but like, is he actually following through with them? Is it really that bad? With this one, it's like, yo, he did a fucking really bad thing and deserves to be in trouble for it.
Yeah.
Well, the beauty of it all, of every time he does one of those things, is that there's enough of a reason to be like, okay, well, it's not like you just like give excuses to him every time. The thing about Escape from LA is you're like, well, he didn't go through with it. Okay, we don't know what would have happened if he did go through with it or whatever. And then like that's too much, man. You're just like, what I love also when it comes back in season 6 is because when that's too much, man, happens, you're kind of like, they're both like fucked up and everything. And like, it's not like he knew she was gonna die. The thing that I love that comes back in season 6 is that he actually waited 17 minutes and to call the police, so that way it made it look like he wasn't there with her when she first passed out. He just drove up, saw that she was there, and then called the police. That was what his story was going to be. And then later on in the show, they realized that like when that whole story came out to the media, it actually said like those 17 minutes were costly, and if he had called the police from the beginning, she actually might still be alive. And that part always gets me, where it's just like, yeah, he does horrible things that you can't just give excuses for.
Yeah, I think because by the end of the show, like all of these characters just keep talking about how terrible of a person he is, and all the terrible shit that he's done comes back to bite him in the ass. And I think in real life, we always kind of wonder how certain people can do fucked up things. There's so many bad people out in this world that do terrible things. And I think this show really gives you an answer of every human being on this earth ends up doing something bad at some point, and it's just whether or not they face up to it or make excuses for themselves. BoJack pretty much just kill someone in this episode, and someone that was very close to him. Well, how did he kill her? Well, they were doing heroin and every other fucking drug imaginable for a couple months at least. Like, they just went on this crazy bender and finally she overdosed. So it's like, okay, is that his fault? Because technically it was a heroin's fault, and it was her choice whether or not to actually take the heroin or whatever. But then she was a recovering addict. So you can kind of try and get into the nitty gritty of like, all right, is there an excuse for this? But when that story comes out, everyone is like, no, this is completely your fault, BoJack. And he's like, well, no, it isn't really. And that's what everyone in real life does. They try and come up with excuses instead of just facing it. And that's what every character ends up having to do in this show, is facing this thing about themselves that they don't want to face.
Yeah.
And whether or not they better themselves because of it.
The time manipulation in this episode is really cool too. That's always just that's the fun time in the episode with like the depressing shit. It's just a fun time.
Yeah, when like he woke up and I think he was like, oh my God, it's March or something like that, where like he realized, because the whole premise is he's on a bender, so he'll just kind of pass out and then wake up somewhere. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe it's a couple hours later. Oh, it's like the next day. But then he realizes like they've been on a bender for like a month. And I'm like, oh my God, like that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
To just like wake up and realize I do not remember like a month of my life now. I am falling apart. And not only that, but then like you're trying to make sense of it and then you can't. You just keep phasing out again and you just keep making more mistakes.
There's a part where they're watching the TV in just like some ugly ass hotel, and then it's the Oscars, and then Sarah Lynn actually won an Oscar. And then she's like, oh my God, I won an Oscar, and kind of realizes like, what the fuck am I doing, kind of thing. And it's just like, I'm just like a fuck up. And it's sad that like the next scene is the scene where she dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's
that went well.
Man. That is the next episode.
Well, because the only thing I want to say about that went well is just that I love that. Because I love the back and forth that BoJack always does, is because the premise of that went well. Earlier in season 3, another co-star of his, Sarah Lynn was a co-star of his. So another co-star of his from the Horsing Around show, Ethan, came back to him and said, I want to make Ethan around and like make a spinoff show, and I want you a part of it. And then he kind of tragically ended that with him. And then after Sarah Lynn died, he was like, I want to like make it up to you. And like, I want to like be there for the people that were kind of like my kids back in the day. So I want to make Ethan around with you. And so that's the whole episode. In the very end is that he's like, there's this little girl on set, and he's all like, oh, you having a good time and everything. And she's kind of like, yeah, I want to grow up to be just like you when I'm older and stuff like that. And he's like, what? You want to be like me? And he's like, no, you don't want to be like me. And then so he decides to quit because he's like, I'm not deserving, which is just amazing, because it's like he thinks he's doing the right thing, but like actually he's like ruining Ethan's show again. And then he runs away, and it just has like one of my favorite shots of the show, which is when he looks at the horses running and just it's like the freedom that they have that he knows he can never have. Yeah, I just love that moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember where I saw this scene, because the ending of that episode, he lets go of the wheel and closes his eyes and just lets the car go. I wish I remembered exactly, but that is an homage to another scene from something. I almost want to say it's Breaking Bad, but literally the exact scene is the main character driving and they let go of the wheel and close their eyes and just let them go. In BoJack, the car goes for a bit and then he opens his eyes and sees something and stops before he goes off the road. In the scene that I saw, the character wakes up and a truck is coming and they get out of the way of the truck. I'm trying to remember if it was in Breaking Bad or not. I'm really pissed off that I can't remember.
I don't know.
But it happened. I saw it. So that's all I can say about that.
Well,
I think it was Breaking Bad. I'm pretty sure it was. Is it fucking? Fuck my head.
The old Sugarman place.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones. That's the one that always gets me a little emotional when she's
Oh
singing the
yeah, yep.
song and he's singing the song, and it's cutting back and forth from the two timelines, and it's just like, oh,
Season 4 is fucking cool because it dives into the relationship with his mom, which was always foreshadowed since the beginning of the show, but then really just about his family, and it just illustrates how it brings up the question of, is he just a product of his environment, because his parents were fucked up and their parents were fucked up, and basically the whole Horseman family, it has just always kind of been fucked up. And you see in that episode the origin of how everything fell apart, and how like sad it is that one tragic event can cascade into just generations of mistakes and just misery for these characters.
Yeah.
It was that always was so cool. I
It's
feel like
funny that like what happened is that like someone wanted to be a hero and
Mhm.
it ended up costing their lives, and so in the war, and then so their mom became the crazy old 40s woman that can't handle her emotions. And so
Mhm.
there's a funny joke in there that I love, that her dad's like her dad says something like your mother's in the other room. She's being way too emotional, way too emotional for my cold-hearted manliness. Now I can't remember the quote like at all, but it's basically just being like, your mother's emotions are way too much for my 40s male to handle, so I'm just
yeah,
gonna leave.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because like, oh, what's the name of the grandfather? What was it? Joseph Sugarman. Yeah. All
yeah,
right. I remember something cool. Because you can argue that he's like, not only is he the crux of the whole family being fucked up, but like he's like the true villain in the end when you think about it, because his actions are what caused all these other characters to be villains and these characters to cause this and that. And it's like the things that he says and does are like horrific. Like he makes his wife have a lobotomy, and she's just reduced to a vegetable, and he has no problem with it. And then he raises his daughter in a fucked up environment where he just never cares about her really, or lets her be her own person, and he just cares about status. But he has this air about him, like he doesn't realize what he's doing is wrong at all, and he's just like, I'm just doing what I believe is right. And it's like interesting how he has no idea
Mhm.
at like all the actions that he causes.
Yeah.
It's like, because and that would be the other thing. Not only do bad people make up excuses, but also sometimes they just don't even fucking realize that what they're doing is terrible and what they're doing is affecting so many others.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
always what was really cool about that episode, and about Time Zero, which is sort of a spiritual sequel to that episode that bookends that season very well. Time Zero, who wants to talk about it? Y'all.
Yeah. Before that, though.
Oh, before that though.
Well, first of all, just the stupid piece of shit
Sure,
artwork
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is just amazing, and I love how they get like emotions right, and they animate them like correctly. There's
yeah,
another episode in season 6 called Good Damage, where it's just like all about just like writing and like a writer's block, and like I feel like they just got that perfectly. I feel like they also got this perfectly too, just like self-hate. And then I just love at the end of the episode, Hollyhock is like, that voice in your head that tells you like you're no good and you can't do anything, which is the voice he has been hearing the whole episode and his whole life. And she's like, that's just like a stupid teenage thing, right? That like goes away. And he says, yeah, yeah, that goes away, and with knowing very well that it doesn't.
Hmm.
And then Ruthie, this is just like one of the most creative endings that I've ever seen,
Yeah.
because the whole episode is like in the very far future, and this girl Ruthie is like giving a presentation to her class about like her like great 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 grandmother, which happens to be Princess Carolyn. And she's like, this was one of the worst days for Princess Carolyn ever. And so she's telling this whole story, and then it's like supposed to be in flashbacks. And then at the end, Princess Carolyn has like goes through so many horrible things, and like a breakup and like losing jobs and shit. And then she calls BoJack, and they're just like kind of talking. And he says like, or she says like, you had a bad day. Or I'll tell you about mine. And she was like, something sad. When I get sad, I think about my future grandchildren and how they like talk about me and like basically just like talk about how like shitty this episode was, but it's gonna get better. And he's like, but that's like fake. And she was like, yeah, well, it keeps me up at night or whatever.
It
So it's
makes
just
me
a
feel
sad,
bad.
yeah, it makes me feel better. It's just so sad that like the end or like Ruthie is just a fake person that like she came up with and only thinks about when she's having one of her worst days ever. And
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah, because I think also with that episode, she was gonna get married. It was like because she's 40 years old in the show, so she's always trying to find someone because she never settled down or had her kids of her own. So she feels like she's running out of time. So the fact that we're introduced to her great 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 grandchild, we're like, oh shit, things work out well for her. But then we see everything not work out well for her and stuff where you start going, wait a second, wait, how is she gonna have a kid? Because this happened.
The first like bad thing that happens is that she has a miscarriage.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. So then the miscarriage, you're like, oh, I guess she gets pregnant again. Oh, she just broke up with that guy. I guess she finds another guy. I guess she does this, and then at the end, like, nope, it's all fake. None of it.
It is so sad because the last scene of Ruthie 2 is that like she's like dragging on this story, and then the teacher in the class are like, come on Ruthie, get going, and she's like, no, wait, don't cut me off, please, I'm just getting to the good part. And then that's the last time she's seen. The rest of the episode is Princess Carolyn, and then she reveals like, yeah, that's a fake person. Like,
Well, that's interesting because then that would be Princess Carolyn's mindset. If she's imagining her great 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 granddaughter tell the story, it's here's all this bad shit, but I'm about to get to the good part. So, but because we never hear the good part, that's because Princess Carolyn accepts there is no good part.
Yeah.
Why we don't see her again.
uh,
Shit's fucked, yo. All right, now Time's Arrow.
Yeah.
It's just so good, so trippy. So I love all of the imagination that the writers have, where like they blur out the faces, they have the X around the
Was a
faces.
stroke of fucking genius.
It's just such a genius episode, and it really delves into BoJack's mom and like BoJack's family and sort of, yeah, the causes of everything. And it's just such a well done, well written show. Their episode.
It's my favorite cartoon episode ever. I don't know if I could ever like like have like a top 10 favorite TV episodes thing where I combine like hour-long episodes with half-hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
This is my favorite half hour of television ever.
Time's Arrow is my third favorite episode of the show. I have Free Churro above that, and then A View from Halfway Down is my number one. I'm trying to think what would be my favorite cartoon episode ever, because the Rick Shank Redemption I fucking love. Graveyard Shift from SpongeBob. I've always fucking loved that episode.
I mean, yeah, it's amazing.
It's fucking amazing. I don't know how I can compare that, but you know.
Maggie Makes 3 is mine.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Simpsons episode that I've seen so far.
Maggie Makes 3 is probably mine, and then View from Halfway Down is probably my second.
Mm-hmm. What I love about Time's Arrow is that I feel like that's their peak, except maybe The View from Halfway Down, of just their animated like creativeness and just everything I love about the show like combined into one. I guess except for the comedy, they don't have as much of that in it, but like the way that they like blend time in a whole half hour is crazy to me, and the way they do that with just impeccable transitions and like crazy artwork. Like there's just like the shot of like Joseph Sugarman and like the fire all around him, and it's like raising up and stuff. I'm just like, everything they do is just incredible in this episode. And yeah, the way they like show her slowly start to forget everything, because these are like flashbacks in her mind, and she has dementia, so she can't like remember every little thing, and you're not going to remember every little thing, which is why it's amazing that like they have subtle details like the face is blurred out and stuff like that.
Something that I think another reason why I fucking love BoJack is a lot of these big episodes from the beginning, you can tell it's a ticking time bomb. Like when you're watching Downer Ending, you hear that title and you're already just like, okay, so it's going to be a downer ending, I guess. And from at that point, you haven't really had a downer ending other than the Telescope. You haven't had one that actually is like crushing. And then they go on this whole acid trip where it's all going to fuck, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god. And then by the end, you're like, holy shit, that was a downer ending. Escape to LA, the whole time you know this is not going to work out. So you're just waiting for it to happen. That's too much, man. You can absolutely tell this whole Bender heroin fucking journey is going to lead to something devastating. But Time's Arrow for me was the really big one. As soon as that episode began, I was like, oh, I'm ready for this. Because we didn't know a whole lot about Beatrice Horseman yet. She was just this villain throughout the show. And Old Sugarman Place was really just about her childhood and not so much about, and also had to do with BoJack as well, was splitting back and forth. But Time's Arrow, it completely just follows her. And I just love it. It takes that concept of splitting time up, which they've done before, the whole acid trip shit, but also the feeling of, oh my God, that something terrible is about to happen. And it's like, it just like gives me tingles every time I'm watching it, where I'm like, oh my God, this is, ugh. It's just so fucking cool. And it gives me the tingle. Get it right there in my gut. This episode also is the only episode that pretty much always makes me cry at the end, because it's the only time BoJack ever just did something purely good for someone that he fucking hated. That sudden, when she suddenly is like, what, BoJack, where am I? And she can't really see it all. And he's like, you're in Michigan or wherever the fuck it was. And he's like, and you're sitting on the porch, and, you know, your brother's playing in the yard, and you're having ice cream, and it's vanilla ice cream. Can you taste the ice cream? And she's like, yes, I can. It's like, that just gets me emotional so much. And it's sad that that's the last time we ever see her. It's just,
yeah,
it's a powerful episode. And then one little bit that I want to point out with the finale, what time is it right now? Just so then we can get to season 5. I think it's hard for me to say. It might be a moment in View from Halfway Down, but at least right now I can say that my favorite moment of the entire show, and also the happiest moment of the entire show for me, is the very end of that episode, because every season ends with BoJack being in sort of a worse place than he was before, I guess, other than season 2. Season 4 is the only season that just ends positively, and it's Hollyhock saying, but I've never had a brother, and BoJack smiles, and it's just a pure, happy, hopeful smile. That always gets to me every single time. I love that. And then I love that season 5 crushes my fucking dreams after that. They're like, we're going to have it end happy. And then season 5 will happen.
There's one joke at the very end of season 4 that I love, because there's this like whole panel I saw, or not panel, but just like a podcast thing of Raphael Bob Waksberg, and it was right before season 4, and they were talking about like the guy asked, like, you make fun of like a lot of celebrities and stuff in here. Are they all just jokes that are just like have, or like for no reason, or sometimes are they just like, we really hate this guy and like we wanted to make it a joke? And then he was just like, most of the time, no, it's just like, sorry, Maggie Gyllenhaal, your name is very close to maggot, so we're gonna make a joke about maggots and your name. Sorry. But he was like, but there is one joke that is just like, when you see it, you know, we fucking hate Jared Leto. Okay, it was like right after the Suicide Squad thing, and everyone like hated him, and just like his tactics, or mailing like used condoms to like other actors and stuff just to try and be crazy and everything. And he was like, no, fuck that guy. When you see that there's a joke in there, you'll know that we say like, fuck that guy. The thing is, the joke that happens is just this very small thing, because at the very end, Hollyhock and BoJack are talking about honeydew, and then they were like, or Hollyhock was just like, oh, I got like this fruit cup, but it's like 70% honeydew. And that's also a running gag that BoJack hates Honeydew, and he's like,
Mhm.
"Ew, Honeydew? Are you kidding me?" And they just like go on this rant about Honeydew, and BoJack goes, "Man, that is the Jared Leto of fruits."
Yeah.
And he was just like, and Raphael Bob Washburn is like, when you see the joke, you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's not that big a deal." But no, we fucking hate that guy.
I didn't know that. That's funny. All
That's
right.
five.
Season 5. Which episodes are we going to talk about?
I feel like Free Churros is really the first one we should.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm.
I have a lot to say about this episode. I'll let you all talk first because I've been talking a lot.
I mean, it's definitely just such a ballsy episode, and it's just so well written, and it has a joke that you would think most people wouldn't like, because it's
Camden didn't like the joke originally. Me and him had
Yeah.
an entire debate of why I love that joke and why he kind of almost felt it ruined the episode a bit.
Yeah, it's like when you sort of first watch it, it's kind of like a tacky ending for a second, and then you think about it and you watch it again, and it's like, no, this is like the only way it could have ended, and it's so genuinely funny. And the episode, I don't know if I've ever seen an episode of anything quite as well written as Free Churro, just because it's so engaging for the whole episode, and it's just one guy talking, and the dialogue has to be like perfect for that, you know?
And it's also because I assume the way they wrote the episode is they had the plot points of like, okay, we need him to realize this to then get to this point somehow, and then it's just filling that gap. But like he is able that inner dialogue for 25 minutes just flows so naturally, like it's almost like a therapy session basically, and it just works so well. And I'm a fuck Will Arnett.
Yeah.
He did brilliantly. I did a horse thing. That's funny. Anyway.
Also Arrested Development guy, so.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of Arrested Development Easter eggs.
It's a great show.
I've never seen it.
I just farted. What I love about my favorite part about Free Churro is that it has like an up down like arc, and has like a book ending a bit, and because my favorite line in that is at the beginning he talks about how his mom was at his dad's funeral and she said, my husband is dead now, or my husband is dead and everything is worse now. And then in the end he's always talking about, or well, right after that he said, I always wondered why she said that. It's not like she like loved him that much. It's like, were you really that sad? And he was like, maybe she was hoping someone would say that at her funeral. He's like, well, guess what? I'm not going to give you the satisfaction and everything. After he goes through this whole arc, he kind of realizes like that like his mom is dead and everything is worse now. And then he says it. And I just always love that part that he just kind of like came full circle in this whole episode.
Yeah.
Realized.
Yeah. The whole full circle with that as well is why the ending of that episode is the only other like full episode joke that rivals my favorite in Fish Out of Water. Their jokes are very similar, but I think
episodes, they're just the opposites of each other because it's just one guy talking in a whole episode and there was no people talking in the whole episode.
This is very true. But what I love about the Free Churro one is that it also connects with the overall theme of the show itself, and more, I mean, both of the jokes do, but I think Free Churro is more important to the story because in a way his mother's death almost does mark the beginning of his real downfall in season 5, because up to that point he was pretty much killing it. But it's very clear that the death of his mom really hits him hard, and basically that he never got to even have a kernel of a relationship with his mother. But the whole time he's trying to figure out why she said, I see you. And by the end, he realizes that it was maybe she always wanted to be seen, that no one really understood her. And she just felt like she was just stuck in this ether and couldn't be herself and no one cared. And, you know, I think we all just want to be seen. And then, but then he realizes she was just saying, I see you, because the letters of the ICU is what she saw. So it wasn't that. But he still takes that meaning out of it either way, to want to be seen. And then the fact that he goes over and realizes that it's not her, means that she still was never seen. And not only that, but BoJack was never seen either because he's always wanting to be seen. All his actions that he do for some reason never matter. Everything that he did in Fish Out of Water, despite the fact that it was amazing, no one ever found out about it and never mattered. Well, in that episode, he spills his entire heart out to assumedly all the main characters in the show and everyone close to him. And it's like, holy shit. By the end of this, you have to understand where he's coming from. But then he realizes he's not talking to anyone who knows him and no one has any clue what he's talking about. And so he just wasted his time. So he is also not being seen either. So that's why that whole moment's just got so fucking much packed into it that it's like, oh shit, dude. How the fuck do y'all come up with that? So yeah, Free Churro, though, my second favorite episode of the show. I was excited for this episode because this was the episode that I had heard about, that I wanted to see, and it exceeded every expectation of mine. And from the beginning after that episode ended, I was like, that's my favorite episode right now. That was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right, where do we want to go now?
I think we should talk about interior sub.
These next three in a row are just like, holy fuck. They just had fun with story devices.
Yeah, I feel like interior sub might be the most creative episode ever. Because what the whole point of the episode is that Wanda Sykes and her girlfriend are like, one's a therapist, and the other is, I don't know what is, some fucking manager thing. But like she's helping out with Todd and Princess Carolyn's like home life, and then the therapist is helping with Diane and BoJack's just I guess relationship really. But they're not allowed to talk about their clients, so they come up with like different ways or they change them ever so slightly. So like Diane is Princess Diana and BoJack is Bobo the angsty zebra. And then not only do they do that, but not only do they say that, but they like animate it in the way that they're describing it. So they're different characters. And the cool thing is that's only like half the episode, because after half the episode, they realize, oh, we're talking about the same characters. So they just go back to normal. And then in the end, it's kind of like it all comes together kind of thing. But I just love the just all the jokes they come up with it. Like Princess Carolyn is like a floating ball of gas, and then Todd is like has a hand for a head. And then the time where like there's a joke where the Princess Carolyn and Todd are arguing, and she goes, "You are a literal knucklehead." And then he was like, "Oh, that's a pretty solid take coming from a gas."
Oh, I just remembered one of the times I laughed fucking hard is in that episode when Todd gets really pissed off. He's like, "Ugh!" And his head turns into a fist and he bangs it on the desk.
Yeah.
That fucking got me so hard.
He takes like his two hands and he like slams it and then slams his head.
He's like, it's just him going, I'm so mad.
There's one point where he's like, "Hey, you can't do, ow, I poked myself in the eye."
They're so fucking good.
And then the ending of it too.
Yeah, fuck.
The ending of it too is just like, because the episode, or was it that episode, or it was a few episodes before.
When she writes the script to reveal that she knows what happened in season 2.
It was a few episodes before where Diane like got the tape.
Yeah.
That Anna Spanakopita got, that of BoJack saying like, "Yeah, I did this thing to this girl," and then, which was the Escape from LA thing, and then she like doesn't know exactly what to do with that yet, which is also the tension in that episode is like they're both going to the same therapist, but she's kind of like talking about him. So then in the end, she's really mad at him, and she writes this scene where it almost forces him to confess at least everything that she knows up to this point. And so now he kind of knows, like, you know about this thing I've done, even though I haven't told you. How do you know? And then so it just spawns tension for the rest of the scene, or for the rest of the season. And then they have like this huge fight in the end too, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right, Keaton, talk about Mr. Peanut Butter's booze. It's a hot take for all of us. I think you probably like it the most.
Yeah, that's an episode that definitely doesn't get enough love. And that's probably the most fun episode to me. Because like I said, I love me some Mr. Peanut Butter. And that's the most centric Mr. Peanut Butter episode you can get. and it blends 4 different timelines perfectly. And the setup and payoff is all over the episode with like the mummy joke and everything. And it's just so funny. And then in the end, it kind of reveals more about Mr. Peanut Butter, and it gets a little dark with that. And you learn more about him and his love life, which is the interesting thing because he's so positive, but he blows through so many wives. And it's just such a well done episode, in my opinion.
So you're saying I get older, but So you're saying as these women get older, I stay the same age?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I just love that episode.
That McConaughey joke.
Yeah. Wait, wouldn't it? That's kind of interesting because Mr. Peanut Butter's a dog, so shouldn't he be aging faster than?
Yeah, he's like he should be the oldest one. I guess.
It's the opposite. He never aged. That's kind of funny. In that episode, like I'm just blown away at the fact that they're able to juggle 4 different timelines and how when you tell a story in 4 different timelines, like different years, it shows how characters have changed. And how they also haven't. Like one detail that I never noticed is Princess Carolyn always dresses up as Amelia Earhart. And each time her costume gets more and more deteriorated, where it's like her dreams of being like Amelia Earhart are dashed more and more as she slowly realizes she will never be like that. And it's just like, oh. And that's just never brought to attention. No one ever points out, oh, you're Amelia Earhart again or whatever. It's just in the background. And this show's full of that, where you're like, if you just like pause and look, you're like, wait a minute, and you just notice shit. You're like, huh.
I think maybe my favorite running gag is Erica.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best.
Because the running gag is that Mr. Peanut Butter is like, he'll always leave someone on their own at a party just to go over to Erica, this character that we never get to see, but he comes up with some crazy way to describe her every time. And he's like, Erica, you got that glass eye.
Yeah.
And then the one in this episode was like, oh, please don't leave me alone with Erica, or please don't leave me for Erica. I don't want to be here alone. And he's like, I have to go see Erica. She just had that surgery or whatever. And then he was like, she was like, oh, can I at least come with you? And he's like, no, there's no way she could see more than one of us at a time. That would be too much for her. And it's just like, what does Erica look like?
Yeah.
And then when he goes over, he's like, Erica, where did you find such a crazy costume? Oh, my mistake.
Yeah. I think my favorite one is when he goes, Erica, what are you doing with the child-sized coffin?
Yeah, and there's one where he's like, Erica, what are you doing here? You know there's children here.
Yeah. Just gets more fucked up. Yeah. All right, Showstopper. Season 5, episode 11.
This one I feel like is like the least talked about penultimate episode, except for maybe Downer Ending. And
this one actually comes up really high on a lot of lists if you look it up.
I usually see it as like one of the least favorite penultimate episodes.
I think it's my 3rd favorite. Because it goes view from halfway down, then that one, or that's too much, man, and then, or wait, no, times arrow.
Times arrow.
All right, so it's my 4th favorite. Either way, every penultimate episode is in my top 10.
Yeah.
So
Downer Ending isn't in mine, but other than that, yeah. But the Showstopper is one I feel like people overlook sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I love that what they do is because his whole thing is that he's on pills and is like addicted again and doesn't really know like what's real or not. So it plays with that a whole lot, and then so by the end when he chokes her out, it's almost as if it's that like he didn't even know that he did it at the end. In the next episode, you see that like he didn't know what happened. He just kind of like woke up and was like, "Whoa, what's everyone?" Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember this episode is the one that every audience member can finally accept that BoJack crossed the line, and it's the one that wakes him up where he finally realizes, "All right, time to go. Gotta change something because I crossed the line there." This episode's another one where the whole time I'm like, something bad's gonna fucking happen. And it plays around with timeline shit as well. I'm a sucker for that. Just they just kill it every single time.
Yeah.
And also ends with one of the most beautiful like visual moments of the show where he sees the balloon and he's just standing there.
That's like maybe my favorite shot in BoJack ever, because I'm just like, what the hell does that mean? I'm like, there's got to be just so much subtext underneath of it and everything, and just like I just love the perpendicular, just him looking up and it being like flat across. I just think that's a beautiful shot. And also just the number, the "Don't Stop Dancing."
That's music shows. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one. Like, oh fuck, like that's kind of funny, but so fucking dark when his mom is dancing and then she dances into a coffin.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking god, bro. Oh shit. Too soon.
God, bro.
Fuck, bro. Yeah. Showstopper, also an amazing episode. Should we get into season 6?
Yeah.
Let's get into it. All right, what are we gonna talk about? What do we want to talk about? Let's wrap it up. Do we just want to go to Face the Depression?
Let's just.
Yeah.
Let's Face the Depression. This episode was so cool because this is the episode where BoJack finally changes appearance for once, and it's like, oh shit, he is like actually older. I keep kind of forgetting about that, and it's like, oh, he's doing nice things. Oh, also one of the times I get emotional is when he finally lets Mr. Peanut Butter have the crossover episode, which I love that when they have recurring jokes and gags that then pay off in an emotionally satisfying way. And you're like, oh, I was always laughing at this, but now I'm like getting misty-eyed. Damn.
Yeah, I love that moment. I just love that like just the change in environment, really, because it's like he goes up to this new place or whatever that he's like gonna be teaching at, and it's all just about like how like he's moving on. He's changed from this LA style where it's just like kind of fake, like happy, warm, go lucky every day kind of thing to like it just seems more like real life, and that's like something I feel like he just desperately needed.
Yeah. All right, quick one while he's away. This one I think is super fucking cool because it is the only episode of the show that doesn't, and it's funny because it's a reverse of the finale, where it doesn't feature any of the main 5 cast members, and then the actual finale of the show, the only characters that speak on screen are those 5 main cast members. So it's like a little flippy flip. That's cool. Just realized that. But yeah, and it's another one where like you have like 4 different storylines going on at the same time, and it's like they somehow kill it. And it's also one that like we were all waiting because this was the end of part 1 of the season. So you're like, episode 7 ended with everything wrapping up and looking happy dappy. So I'm wondering how the fuck they're gonna crush me, and they did it again. The end of episode 8, and you're like, fuck.
That was one of the most like, oh shit moments.
That was such a cool cliffhanger.
Yeah, I feel like I've never had a moment that I have gone, what, more than the Breaking Bad end of season 4. Just have you seen okay, you've seen it, so but there's the whole Lily of the Valley thing. I was like, what? I was like running around my room and shit. But this one, just like realizing that it was Pete Repeat that she was talking to, and he like goes on the story. It's like, it's kind of weird because there was this time that this celebrity was like doing this stuff, and then you only realize it like a little bit in, and then you're like, oh my god, he's talking about BoJack. And then she's like, what's his name? And it's like, that's the end. You're like, that, because that's just an obvious setup for like it's about to all come down.
I love that.
And it's sad because Hollyhock was like the only happy relationship that was semi-pure with BoJack, and it was like, oh, BoJack has like a family a bit. Not anymore. Not anymore.
I've heard some hate on the pig character and like the old timey news reporter people. I fucking love those guys.
They're fucking every
They're
word they
hilarious.
speak is witty and clever and double entendre, and it's like, what the fuck?
I'm like, that's where I feel like they showcase their writing like one of the best.
Yeah, yeah.
I fucking love those
It's like they're just showing off. They're just like, look at how fucking perfect we are, dude.
guys.
All right, part two. Do we want to get to what's a good one? Are we just skipping a view from halfway down?
I guess so. Because I feel like the whole thing about season six in general, mainly with part two though, is that it's supposed to go like a certain way, which I feel like is why I can't like say it's my favorite, just because like the reason season five is my favorite is because the idea of gimmicks I feel like was just displayed the best in those, and just like their perfectly wrapped little stories in amazing ways were done just incredibly in season five. Whereas season six, at least especially part two, it's like it has to like trickle down and go a certain way in order for this to keep going. But
Yeah,
so
it's hard to like.
it wasn't like a
Like,
high ceiling. It was just a super high floor.
yeah, there's not as many standout episodes. It's just every episode is great leading into the next one. It's almost like part two is just a movie, and each episode is just a part of that movie. But
Yeah.
without a doubt, the climax of it, View from Halfway Down, is I hail it the Ozymandias or Ozymandias, however you pronounce it, of BoJack Horseman, because everything in the whole show built to this, and
And
it was
so,
perfect.
and you don't, because it's such a messed up show, and they don't care about any of their characters. And I remember because everybody's making predictions before season six came out of what's going to happen to BoJack. Is he going to go to prison? Is he going to die? What's going to happen? And a lot of people said he would die or something.
You commit
And then,
suicide.
yeah, and when you're watching from halfway down, you're like, yo, is he going to die? And like the finale is going to be a funeral. And you kind of think that's exactly what happens. And that's one of the few times when you're watching a show like that that you actually think the main title character is just going to permanently die before the show ends.
Hmm.
And it's so well done.
Yeah, because suicide was hinted from the very beginning
Yeah.
of the show. Like, a drug addicted, washed up, depressed, hateful person who is, done a lot of bad things and is running away from it. It really only ends two ways. He either dies, and probably by suicide or drugs, or he gets caught and accepts it and becomes a better person. And you just you're wondering the whole show, which is it going to be? And I think a lot of people kept saying that the show ending with him committing suicide would be the wrong way to do it, because it essentially shows that you can't better yourself and that in the end you are destined to just lose to yourself in a way. And the way that they do this episode so brilliantly is you're not sure what's going on initially, and it's again one of those episodes that's, I know something is up and I'm terrified of what is actually up, because right before this we see a shot of BoJack probably at his absolute lowest point, and you're like, what's about to happen? And it's that dripping goo throughout the episode that you're paying attention to, and you're like, hang on, what is that? And then slowly it builds, and then you realize it with him that he might be dead. This is like all in his mind, and he's not coming back. And what's so cool is that water was repeatedly used as a symbol of like either rebirth or death for him. And it was foreshadowed from the very first episode. They have that picture frame of the horse treading water trying to get out. And then in Downer Ending, they show BoJack in the water treading water, and they say, what is he doing? And he's like, well, the characters are watching him, and they're like, what is he doing? And he's like, I don't know, but he's not getting anywhere. And I love how that all came back around, because that's the exact same pool that he ends up almost drowning to death in. I think that's so cool. And it's also scary because usually when suicide's shown in a show, well, first of all, it's not shown in this, but whenever suicide is done in a story, it's usually just a classic thing of I'm so sad, I'm gonna hang myself, or I'm gonna shoot myself, or whatever. But I feel like it's more realistic sometimes where you don't even fully realize that you did it. You probably are like drugged out, and your mental state is so fucking gone that like suddenly you realize like, oh fuck, I just did this thing. Like, oh shit, like your mind just wakes up. And that is what's so scary, and why like I like this episode is such a fantastic anti-suicide message, because the view from halfway down is like literally realizing, oh my god, I am halfway to death and I can't go back. And now that I see the view from halfway down, I wish I could go back. And that's what BoJack realizes. Like, all that is so fucking terrifying.
Mhm.
And with it being the culmination of the series and all these characters returning, like, it is just fucking perfection.
Yeah.
And
And
I cannot sing enough praise.
I think the way they chose to end the show was perfect, because I had always said, like, I remember we had an LA trip in between the first and second half of season 6.
Yeah.
So we watched the first half of season 6 together. And then I remember us trying to come up with predictions and everything, and like what we thought would happen. And I remember saying, like, yeah, whatever they decide to do, I'm sure it'll be great and I'll love it. Because we all had the worry of, like, what if it's like Game of Thrones and it's really hard to end stuff and they just don't do it right. And I was like, I honestly trust them, because I mean, I feel like either way you could have gone with it, you could have made a certain message. I think that the one they did was better, but let's say you did go the route like he dies. And it could just be like a Homer's enemy type thing of like you're making fun of your audience, or you're making fun of your viewers, or just like the world that you live in the sense that, like, because if he died, it would probably be that like he was somewhat praised a bit, so he died early, and like the people around him, like just death, it causes sympathy, and then the real message would be that, like, well, you shouldn't have, but everyone's going to, because that's life. And life kind of sucks. And I feel like that would be a cool ending. But I think the way they did it was perfect, where it's that you live. And then that's also one of the last lines of the show, is that BoJack's like, well, sometimes life's a bitch and then you die. And then Diane's like, sometimes life's a bitch and you keep on living. And the whole thing is that, like, the perfect thing about this show is that it's just a cycle over and over and over again. To really have an ending, I feel like wouldn't do it justice. I feel like you have to say that, like, it's going to keep going on and you're going to have to keep paying for the actions you've done over and over and over. And it's never going to be over, but that's not necessarily like a bad thing.
Yeah, and there's always time and room for you to make up for what you are running away from. There's always a chance for you to better yourself, and that giving up is not the answer. So in the end, it is a positive message, which I think is a better thing. I think people can take that away more rather than just, oh, life sucks. It's like, we kind of know that, So, yeah. Keaton, do you have any thoughts on the whole ending of BoJack?
I mean, that's what you said is pretty much it. It's just a perfect bittersweet ending. I think it sort of ended the way it was supposed to end. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really new to add. It's just it just ended the way it should have. Where you look at something like Game of Thrones and the episodes are like, why does it feel like a new team of like intern writers are writing this finale right now who have never done it? With this one, it was like, no, they just had an outline for all 6, or I guess more, but for the future seasons, what was going to be set up, what was going to be paid off, and they just paid off everything perfectly for the final season.
Yeah, because stories, to me, I like to call them puzzles in a way, where you have puzzle pieces and you're not really sure where they go exactly when you begin, but you're hoping that in the end you're going to make a beautiful puzzle and it's all going to fit together perfectly. But it's almost impossible, because you somehow create new puzzle pieces that look different from the old ones, and so you're trying to create even newer ones to match that, and you're just going all over the place, and sometimes you're in this corner and then you're over here and you're like, oh shit, I gotta eventually get back to that corner, but I don't know where those pieces are. And so in the end, like, a satisfying story is like a finished puzzle where it's like, oh, that fit in perfectly, that setup came back to give this perfect payoff, and oh my god, that and it's so fucking hard to do that when you're doing a TV show. Movies can do it. Movie series can sometimes do it. TV shows are the biggest puzzles by far. And BoJack is one of the few times where I can safely say that every puzzle piece fit in as perfectly as they could have. With also leaving me with this feeling of maybe the puzzle itself never got completed, but every piece that they put it in there. So it's like, because in the end, it is sort of like there isn't quite a finality to it because the characters live on and they've distanced themselves. If BoJack died, that would be, the puzzle is done. But instead he lives and he never got better. He's still atoning for his sins, but that's it, And it's like, this puzzle is perfect just the way it is. I don't need any more pieces added to it. It's done. So,
yeah.
BoJack Horseman, one of the most satisfying shows ever. You're going to learn a fucking lot from it if for some reason you're still watching this video and you haven't watched the show, despite the fact that we've spoiled a lot of it. I don't think we spoiled a lot of it, but who gives a fuck,
Watching it is half the experience with the style of the show and everything. You're not going to get it all by three idiots talking about it.
Exactly. But, yep, I'm going to say that's it for this podcast. We talked for a while, and it was nice while it lasted.
Good damage.
Oh, horny unicorn. I get it.
Oh, surprise.
Okay, guys. Prickly muffin, all right.
Wow, that was a downer ending.
Surprise.
That was a surprise. I didn't expect you to do it again. You're like Pete Repeat.
That went well.
You're like Pete Repeat.
You can say that again.
True.